And we are live for the final episode of the season for PB Betting College Football. This is episode 20. Mr. Paisley, it is Saturday, January 18th. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish have a chance to win a national championship. We'll break down the semifinal games and then jump into the preview for Notre Dame, Ohio State, and then some final thoughts on the end, Mr. Paisley. I tell you what, I am not excited to do this podcast, trying to bail on it. I'm not going to lie to all of our listeners out there. If you don't know, I'm a Penn State fan, Jared, as you could see, a Notre Dame fan with the green hoodie and a Notre Dame flag behind him. So anyway, Mr. Paisley, you must be feeling pretty good here on this nice Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, no, just been riding a nice high case from the semifinals there. You know, it's been a magical run for Notre Dame with some close calls last couple games, and that game against Penn State was definitely raised the blood pressure a little bit, probably for both of us, but had to end with one of us being happy, one of us being a little upset. So just got some bounces to go Notre Dame's way in the end. We'll fully break it down, but I am definitely so excited. Just what a great time of the year, Case. Very excited for this championship game. Didn't think Notre Dame would be in this spot, but might not be a favorable spot for them, which we'll break down later, but just happy they got here in a successful season. But brimming with a lot of happiness lately, Case. I don't know if you could say the same yourself.
Can't say the same. It was a good few months, few weeks. But yeah, that game took the life out of me there. Not upset, more of an anger, to be honest, more of a, an angry type of feeling. But we're over it now. Teams have to win, teams have to lose. And I don't think either team would have beat Ohio State. Maybe Notre Dame has the chance to prove us wrong, but that was kind of my thoughts going into it. So with that, college football semifinal recap, we may as well just start with the Penn State Notre Dame game. It's obviously the one that we care more about. I know the national personalities were talking about Ohio State, Texas being, the real game of the week, but I don't know. It was a good game from a college football perspective. If you're a fan of neither team, it was a very college football-esque game. A lot of mistakes. Penn State obviously came out early, looked good. I thought they really dominated the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball for maybe at least 3/4 of the game, is at least how I felt. Notre Dame dominated the third. I thought outside of that, I thought Penn State did really good. They ran the ball pretty successfully in the first half, had a chance to go up more. I mean, they were up 10-0. I thought it could have been more than that if Drew Aller doesn't miss that first quarter throw to Nick Singleton. He threw it at his feet. They had to settle for a field goal there. Penn State offense, kind of like it was all season, was just a little inconsistent. They could not get over the hump against Notre Dame. And we knew that. We knew Notre Dame's defense is elite. We knew it was going to be a difficult scoring game. But at least my point of view, I felt sick when it was 10-3 at halftime because I thought Penn State played a much better first half. Should not have been 10-3. I had a bad feeling when it was 10-3. Notre Dame got the big field goal at the end of the half, which I think was really huge. I don't think if that happens, they may not win this game. I mean, that field goal was huge to cut it to 7 because they got the ball back, went right down and scored, and all of a sudden we're tied. So Notre Dame did enough. They hung in there the whole time. They were right there. They took the lead in the third quarter. They looked much better in the third quarter. Penn State kind of got things going again on offense in the fourth quarter. Both teams had chances to win. And obviously we know the big Aller mistake. I mean, there were mistakes. Just not just Drew Aller, everybody. I mean, defensively, Cam Miller, I don't know. He just decided to trip on probably the most important play of his life and gave up that 56-yard touchdown. He transferred to Rutgers this past week, so that's a great spot for him. I wish him all the best in his future endeavors at Rutgers. But yeah, it's complete disappointment between that and, Aller missing all the throws. Obviously, the mistake at the end was just the icing on the cake. But no, it was a good game. And Notre Dame, I'm not just trying to all sound like Penn State lost this game. It was all them. No, Notre Dame did win the game. They did enough. They played really well in the third quarter. When they needed to score, they did. That was kind of the story. When they were kind of backed up against the wall, it felt like they were able just to strike quick. The backup quarterback came in and handled a good 20, 30 yards to get in a field goal range. And Jeremiah Love really got going in the second half. And that was kind of the difference there, is they got their run game going a little bit, which they didn't in the first half. So I'll let you go here in a second, Paisley, but I'm not going to blame James Franklin on this one. I'm blaming pretty much all the players that screwed it up here, starting with, Drew Aller and then Cam Miller really just, deciding to fall over. And then also that Abdul Carter not recovering that fumble. I mean, I thought the calls overall were fine. They weren't maybe perfect, but I thought it was enough to win the game. I thought they put themselves in position to win the game. And, they just, I don't know, did the all-time, Penn State type of ending. So I don't think either one of us would have been shocked if our team blew this game. It was unfortunate for me that it was Penn State. But anyway, all that said, Paisley, how did Notre Dame win the game?
Yeah, I mean, I think hit a lot of great points there, Case. It was a crazy game, instant classic right from the start, just a lot of back and forth. It was an awesome game, even for non-Notre Dame Penn State fans. We got a lot of blowouts in the first couple rounds, so it was nice to see this game and the other semifinal be really tight down to the end with some big key plays by some key players. But yeah, I think he started off, he said it correctly. Like, Penn State was owning the line of scrimmage, really running the ball. They were using a lot of tempo, which we haven't seen from Penn State all year. I thought that was a nice key difference that they used. They just looked like they had a great game plan to start out the game, and I was like blown away that Penn State was hitting all the right buttons. And I thought they should have been up a little bit more, Case, at halftime. It was 10-0. Leonard goes down after a big hit, hits the back of his head. I thought he was out the rest of the game. By that time, I was like, we're done. Like, I was literally watching it with a couple of Notre Dame fans, and we were not in the best of moods right before halftime. We're like, this is it. Like, they couldn't really move the ball game. Penn State was running it at will. You could tell Notre Dame was a little tired from that bad spot with less days rest. They're a little banged up. They're very undersized on the D-line. So Penn State really took advantage of that in the first half. They still ran for a ton of yards in the full game. But, yeah, I think you said that. Steve Angeli, who would have thought, the backup quarterback who came in for Notre Dame, he's a good quarterback. And I thought he was going to transfer to go start somewhere else, but he decided to stay at Notre Dame, and he knew he was going to be the backup, and he had to wait his turn. He really didn't come in all year. Leonard was the starter all year, didn't get injured, and then in a big spot, he drove him right down the field. He's a little bit better passer than Leonard, not as much of a runner, so I think the short passing game was really opened up there with Angeli and got him that huge field goal. And you get that momentum going into halftime, and Notre Dame had the ball coming out of the second half too. So it was the middle eight they talk about, like the last 4 minutes of the first 4 minutes of the second half is a really big part in the NFL and college football. Notre Dame's been dominating that all season, so that really propelled them. They came out of halftime, got back. I don't know what adjustments they make, and they're really good at making adjustments. And usually they're up at halftime in most of the games this season. This was the first time they were actually like down at halftime. And I just really can't stress enough this coaching staff for Notre Dame is really, really good. And they really switched some things up, I think, offensively more. Really got the pass game opened up with Leonard a little bit. The run game then started to open up, which was non-existent in the first half. They were just moving the ball a lot better in the second half. I felt like the adjustments were a lot better for Notre Dame on that side of the ball. And then the defense kind of clamped down. They just kind of rode that momentum. It was 10-0, and then it was 17-10. So Notre Dame scored 17 straight points just to kind of – we talked about momentum before that game too. In these playoff games, it's huge. If you get a field goal, even those 3 points are massive. A turnover, Leonard had a bad pick on the sideline to Sutton at the end who dropped, and that was a big swing for Penn State. The Jeremiah Love touchdown where he was running through people and then just kept fighting. That was a big touchdown. But, yeah, I was really impressed with Notre Dame's offense in the second half. Gave me some hope going into this Ohio State game that, maybe there's some life there. There's still not a great offense if they're not running the ball consistently. The great house catch was awesome. Made the guy slip the second time. He did fall the first, and the safety came over, made him slip, and then got in the touchdown to tie it up. But, yeah, I think it just came down to in the second half in these tight games, like Notre Dame's just very well sound, like fundamentally in these big moments. Like when they needed a third down, I think their third down conversion rate, I just pulled up the stats here because I was looking at these stats after the game, Case, and I was like, oh, this was like kind of makes more sense. But Notre Dame was 11 for 17 on third downs, and Penn State was 3 for 11.
Yeah.
So they were 2 for 2 on fourth down. Penn State was with a couple key pickups, but I just feel like when in the second half, when they needed a play or needed a short yard rush, they were able to get it into third and shorts, third and manageables, and it was either Leonard with the legs or Leonard's with a short pass to get them that first down and keep moving the chains. And Notre Dame got some timely stops. I just remember that one right at the end of the game. I forget. I think it was like late in the fourth quarter. They punted it back. Notre Dame, it was a tie game, and I'm like, shoot, Penn State's going to go right down here and just kick a field goal. They need 20 or 30 yards, and they got the 3 and out, got it back. and then I think they punted again or something like that. So it was just like Notre Dame was just making some really timely plays, I feel like, in that second half. I mean, Penn State, I just thought that run game was really cooking, and they were sticking to it, a good amount, but I felt like they could have used it a little bit more. But everyone wants to blame Alar, and I think that's a good place to start. But the receivers had no receptions, and it's hard to tell. We talked about this during football season, like to see the full picture. Are these receivers really open? He's not throwing it to them, or are they not covered and he's going to throw interceptions? So I think that was super surprising. I didn't realize it during the game, and then you see
Oh yeah.
the bagel after the game with the receivers with no catches. I think that was a part. But we kind of previewed and we highlighted all these things. That Penn State's run game was going to get going. Notre Dame's secondary is good. Penn State could run the ball a little bit. So like all those things played out, and then it just came down to a couple key plays. And then you said that turnover at the end was just brutal. I can't believe that still happened. And then Notre Dame still had a couple big first downs to get that field goal a little closer. So in these huge games, it's going to come down to little itty bitty plays. If it's a 3-point game, 7-point game, so I just feel like Notre Dame got more of those plays to work out for them in the second half than Penn State.
Yeah, well, yeah, they certainly did. I mean, yeah, the receivers no catches. There's no separation in my opinion. I think it was one of the worst groups of all time wide receiver. I mean, they didn't even have their best one. Harrison Wallace was hurt. I mean, there was no outside of our running backs and Tyler Warren. I don't think there was any help really for Aller. So the blame is definitely on them too. However, that being said, I mean, it's still Aller's job to make the throws he has to make, and clearly he did not. I mean, he missed 4 or 5 wide open guys. He missed Warren a couple of times. He missed Singleton on that like wheel route that could have been a huge gain, maybe even a touchdown in the first half. I mean, that was a huge miss. And then obviously, the interception was really bad. But yeah, I mean, Notre Dame did enough. They got that key stop. Like you said, the fourth quarter was really weird. It felt like at times both teams were kind of back up against the wall. I mean, Penn State goes up 7 late in the fourth, and Notre Dame's driving, and Penn State gets that stop and force Notre Dame to punt it back, and then there's 50 seconds left, and you're like, man, Penn State now has a chance to win again, obviously before the mistake. So it was a wild game. I mean, obviously I'm disappointed, but yeah, just a frustrating way to go out in the semifinals, especially in a winnable game. I think both of us would have felt like that, a chance to advance in a, you don't know how many chances these teams will get. I think we'll see it more, like we highlighted on last episode with the expansion of the playoff, and I think both these teams are pretty well in position to continue to make the 12-team playoff pretty much long term, unless they really take a couple steps back or have a down year. But outside of that, they really should have these opportunities more. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a college football-esque game. Like I said, if you were not a fan of either, this was probably the most college football type of game all season, with just the mistakes, the back and forth. I mean, the highs and the lows, the god-awful officiating. I mean, just kind of all around was a sloppy game. And it was a great setting down there too. We didn't make the trip down there, but looked like a great time. It was pretty even. It seemed like the crowd, a lot of Penn Staters I know that were all down there, and it was a good weekend. Wish it would have ended differently for me, but as we said, Paisley, one of us were going to be in this situation, and here we are. So
yeah.
Good game all around.
And just last point on this, like it's tough to look at college football sometimes, that's the same or different than the NFL. But I feel like in college, you really got to look at the games that they kind of play similar opponents or really elite opponents. And you look back to that Penn State game versus anybody else but Ohio State, and like their offense and receivers weren't an issue. And it's like that Boise State game, they were hitting some big chunk plays. The SMU game, they weren't really throwing it that much. But then I feel like you got to look at those games, because Ohio State and now Notre Dame, those two games, like the receivers just couldn't help out, and it was very Tyler Warren reliant. And the offense just really couldn't get going. And same for Notre Dame. Like they were able to run the ball on anybody. And then you look at these last couple playoff games against Indiana, take out that 98-yard run, Georgia, now Penn State, they're not really running the ball that great. So It's great what you do against some of these lesser teams, but the talent gap is so big in college football. So I think that's just one thing to keep in mind going forward. And I'm interested to see with this championship game, but like, how do you look against the elite teams? I don't really care how you look against, the bottom feeders of your conference or some of these bottom teams in the ACC that Notre Dame played. So I think those are some key vantage points you could take going into a game and see how those offense, because I feel like they kind of was pretty similar to what we saw in those big time games. But yeah, overall it was a crazy game, back and forth. Anybody could have had it. One team wasn't more deserving than the other. It was very even. But yeah, one just made the timely plays, even down to that kick where he made the kick at the end. It was going right at the upright and then just curved in a little left, like just little inches mean a lot here in these big games. So it was a crazy one for sure.
It must have been the Pope or God or something coming down and blowing the ball back through the uprights. I don't know, but we'll see what happens with the game against Ohio State. The other matchup, Ohio State, Texas. I mean, it was a pretty close game all the way through. Every time Ohio State had the chance to kind of pull away or they got the ball back up 7, the Texas defense kind of stood up. I was pretty impressed with them pretty much throughout the game. We all know how it ended with the Texas trying to run it, to the side with the 3-yard pitch, and then obviously the next play, Ewers with the strip sack touchdown for Ohio State, and Ohio State ultimately covered. They did play better. I kind of felt like Ohio State should have won that game, but Texas was right there in it. I mean, down to a play, the chance to tie it late in the 4th. I mean, similar to really, the Ohio State-Penn State game. Penn State had a couple of chances on the 2-3 yard line to tie it late in the game and just were never able to do it. Well, same exact thing happened to Texas, where they're right down there. They're playing a close enough game to win it. It seemed like Ohio State had the edge. And then obviously they just made the big defensive play to win the game was really the difference. I don't know. Ohio State's offense was a little bit inconsistent at times. I mean, if you're a Notre Dame fan, to give you some maybe hope is if the defense could be as elite as they say it is one more time, it's like maybe they could try to limit the Ohio State offense. I don't know, because you get the Ohio State offense against Oregon or Tennessee, and it's like, I don't see a chance. But all of a sudden, Howard looked a little, it didn't look great. I mean, they weren't running the ball great against Texas. They did enough to win the game, but Texas was right there and had a chance to win, and ultimately did not with the biggest, strip sack at the end of it. Really just cost them the game, but close game, low scoring as kind of we thought it would be. I think we were both kind of on that side of it, but it's Ohio State. They come up on top, and we'll see what happens with them and Notre Dame.
Yeah, this game, I feel like a lot of people are giving Ohio State a lot of credit and just giving them flowers, and no one's really talking about Texas. I thought Texas showed really well. Nobody was really giving them a chance.
Yeah,
a lot of people, and I think we both liked Ohio State to blow them out, and Texas really hung in there good. I mean, they matched up pretty well in defense. I was seeing that they played 80% zone, kind of just keeping the Ohio State team in front of them, not really letting them hit those big plays. That Tennessee and Oregon are kind of a man-based defense. Notre Dame's also a man-based defense. So they really matched up good, had a good game plan defensively, but their offense just couldn't get much going. Had some nice running back passes out of the backfield that really opened up some things for them on the Texas side. But yeah, I thought Texas showed a lot better. I don't know how they didn't cover. Like, that should have easily been a cover. I think the 2 big plays, and it's luck, variance, like whatever you want to call it, but like, it was a tie game going into the half, and then Ohio State calls a screenplay, somehow goes for 75 yards.
Yeah.
Like, Texas, they only rushed 4. They had 7 guys back there. No one could tackle him. Henderson is quick. Like, he is fast. He's good back. But, like, that's a kind of lucky play right before the half. Talk about momentum. That gave them momentum then. If it's a tie ball game, I feel like that's different going into the half. And then the huge play you talked about, like 2nd and 1 on the 1. They run a pitch to the outside. Like, I don't hate the call, but it just, the execution was bad. And then with Downs, he's so fast. Like, but Penn State showed in their game, they ran up the middle 4 times and couldn't get in the middle.
Right.
So I think Texas made things side. So
yeah, I mean, I think they ran it up the middle 3 and then tried to fucking throw it on 4th down, which was the dumbest thing in the world. But yeah. So, you're right. They were trying to they were trying to go off of the playbook a little different because they saw Penn State fail up the middle, so they were trying to get cute with it and pitch it. But those Ohio State guys are so quick that has disaster written all over it.
Yeah, but their defense is so good. Ohio State's, like, everyone's talking about the Smith and Will Howard playing really good on the offense, and it's a good offense. It's really good, but the defense, I feel like, has been so stout and so good. Even their loss to Michigan, they only gave up 13 points. Like, they're really, really good. They have a lot of veterans. They're not going to be great next year probably because they have a lot of 4th and 5th and 6th year guys, but they are playing at an elite level. So it's hard to attack them. Do you go outside? Do you go inside? But Texas really hung with them, and, they get that touchdown there, it's tied up late in the game, but then you look at the final score, and they win by 2 touchdowns, and that's a huge variance play too when you strip sack on the one, the guy who strips it bounces right up into his lap, takes it, 99 yards to the house, like, that was a crazy swing in the game, so I think Ohio State looked a little more mortal. Like, I'm not saying that Notre Dame's gonna win this outright going to the next game, but they just look so unstoppable against Tennessee and Ohio and against Oregon, where it's like the motivation was definitely there for Tennessee, and then the motivation was definitely there for Oregon from losing to Oregon early in the year. Now it kinda wears off every game. You can't really use that same like us against the world, no one believes in us because now everyone's betting you and you're big favorites. So that's just something to keep in mind too. And they really held Jeremiah Smith in check, really doubling him, really just playing a lot of zone behind it. Will Howard had that bad pick trying to force it to Jeremiah Smith, which really kind of turned. And again, we'll get into this breakdown, but did you not? I feel like they switched the playbook again once Howard threw that pick, and then they went super conservative, just like they did against Michigan. Like they're fine going deep, and then once he makes one mistake, they kind of just like turtle up, and they're like, okay, let's just be conservative now and not try and lose the game. So if Notre Dame could force a pick, or if you get a turnover early, that could really maybe shake some things up. But I still think at their peak, Ohio State is really, really dominant. They just have some really talented players all around the field. I mean, that it's a $15-20 million team, so they're finally playing at that type of level. But I really thought Texas showed good. I was really impressed with them. So I feel like more people should be talking about Texas and not as much as how amazing Ohio State is. But then they could turn it right around this game too. But we'll see about that.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a lot, obviously, about Notre Dame and Ohio State. But yeah, your point on Texas. I mean, their entire season has kind of slid like a little bit just under the radar, and then they're going to fall short here, and like nobody's going to remember the 2024 Texas team, and they had such great chances. I mean, they were picked preseason to be in this thing, have a chance to win the SEC. Both their losses are arguably their most important games. Georgia twice, and then their third loss in the playoff to Ohio State, probably the first, once again, game for them that was a toss-up. I don't know. I like Steve Sarkisian, but I'm starting to question a little bit some of these. I mean, I don't know. It seems like this is now a growing track record as well of Steve Sarkisian not being able to get them over that hump. And I know there's a lot of coaches like that, particular Mr. James Franklin. The difference is I think Texas had all the talent in the world. My argument on Franklin's always like, they're losing all these stupid games, but we probably should lose them all because Ohio State's way better. Now, the coaches, you're right. It's not good if your coach can't get you in positions to win at least a few of these. That's fair. But Texas is better, I think, than Georgia. I think Texas has the talent to compete with Ohio State. Like they're losing these games a little bit different, I think, than Penn State's lost some of these games. I don't know. I'm starting to get a little questionable of what they're doing down there because they should be in this national title race. And they were. I mean, they're in the semifinal, but like it just feels like moving forward and like last year, like Texas should be there. Their talent's right there. So we'll see what happens with them moving forward with NIL. But I don't know. Sarkisian, early notice here is January 2025. Let's regroup in a year and let's see what Steve Sarkisian's doing because I don't know. I'm starting to get a little skeptical of down there. And I know, like you said, they did play a really good game and they were right there to win it. But like they could have won it. I mean, they had enough talent to do it. It just seemed like all year they were right there, and we just never saw what they could have been with all that talent. I mean, there and being able to score. And I thought they could have had a much better defense. And I don't know. It was one thing to take away is just how will history look at Sarkisian and this Texas team and long term because I think they're better than kind of what happened this year.
No, I think that's completely fair, Case. I was going to mention that this might have been the top 1 and 2 talent-wise if you're just going based off talent and 5-star recruits and transfer portal additions and stuff. Texas is really talented. That's what people don't really realize. Like I think you're right. They're more talented than a Georgia, than Alabama this year. And then you got to play out on the field, but that's also fair too. Their 3 biggest games, they looked outmatched the first time against Georgia. Then they had a lead where they should have had more of a lead, and then they blew it at the end when their backup came in the game for 2.5 quarters against Georgia. And then now this game against Ohio State just couldn't really push through and, had their moments, like I said, but didn't really feel like they were controlling the game or felt like they should have won the game. But I think that's a fair point, Case, because, you talk about all these super talented teams. Texas was right up there, and they definitely matched up athlete for athlete with Ohio State. But, Yeah, and then you look at their other games, like, it was kind of an easy schedule besides that. Like, they didn't really have any marquee wins besides, the Georgia losses and now the Ohio State loss, and even against Arizona State, got a little fortunate there. Clemson scored a bunch on them. That game was a little closer than the final score suggested. So,
Right.
I think it's fair to point out some stuff where I don't think Texas really reaching their potential or their ceiling really.
Yeah, no, their best win came at the end of the year against 8-4 A&M. I mean, on the road, that was their marquee win. And I know A&M had a tough schedule, but they were not a top 10, top 15 team by any means. So I mean, that's their best win, which is a win. I mean, maybe Arizona State, I guess you throw it in the playoff, maybe that's their best win. I don't know, but like they just disappointed me. And I know we were both low kind of on them coming into this year, but I don't know. I don't even know who's right or wrong now, because I feel like they played better. They were better than they've been all year, but than I thought they would be at the start of the year. But then they just completely lost, like you said, every big game, the Georgia games, and then Ohio State. So it's like, what did they really accomplish at the end of the day?
Right.
All right. Well, we may as well get right into it. Notre Dame, Ohio State, January 20th, presidential inauguration day. Let's see. Only thing I'm looking forward to on this day. Probably won't even watch this game. But Paisley, I'll let you have the floor here on the matchups. I mean, I like Avi. I'll just say it right away. I like Ohio State laying the points. This might be more of a bias thing. Just still my anger might be there. I'm not sure. But no, I do really think I do with my brain as well. Probably would have taken Ohio State laying the points as well if it was Penn State in the situation with a similar spread. So I'll just say that. We'll see what Ohio State team we get. If it's like Texas and the Notre Dame defense could slow the Ohio State offense down, I think that's their path to winning. I think you're going to need to ask Notre Dame to make an elite play. You're going to need to sack Howard. You're going to need to get pressure. You're going to have to, stop the run, or the biggest thing is if they could force a mistake or two, it could be huge in this game. If Notre Dame's not able to do any of that, and Ohio State's able to, I don't want to say score at will, but just put up, 17, 21 points in the first half or something like that, I just don't see Notre Dame being able to keep up on that pace, especially because I think the Ohio State defense is elite, and I think they're better than the Penn State defense. So just from that point of view, is I think I think Ohio State could break away from that. But Paisley, Notre Dame expert here, tell me what the Irish path to win here, and if they could shock the country and pull off a miraculous championship.
Yeah. First started off with the Penn State fans. It is a tough game for you guys, as I know. I mean, going against, who do you root for, against Ohio State or Notre Dame here? Definitely a tough one.
It is tough, actually.
Just maybe a tie, or maybe the game gets canceled. So I was seeing online.
Asteroid might hit. I don't know. It'd be great. Or maybe they should cancel the game because it's gonna be too cold outside or whatever.
That's true. All right. Gotta be careful. But
even though it's in a dome, whatever.
Yeah. Maybe the AC won't work or something, or the heat won't be on.
That'd be nice.
But yeah, going into this game, right after Notre Dame beat Penn State, we were not confident going into this Ohio State game. Like, it's just a bad matchup. Like, there's a few factors that Notre Dame could do to kind of keep this game close and maybe squeak out a game and keep it close enough and get those key plays like we talked about against Penn State, but not likely. On the surface, I thought the number was a little high, but then you kind of dig into the matchup and it kind of makes sense, and just seeing what Ohio State is at this peak. So I've been so back and forth on both of these. I kind of like Notre Dame initially, then I liked Ohio State when I dug into it a little bit. And then I'm trying to dig into, do as much research as I can. I'm still kind of 50-50. The over-under, leaning more towards the under if I had to pick, but
45.5.
Yeah, 45.5. I think the number's just a little short though too. And that Penn State and Notre Dame game went over, which I thought had no chance of going over at halftime, and it did. So I think Ohio State's offense is a lot better than Penn State. So it's like, I don't know. I think that's around the same number. So I'm just very conflicted on both sides, but I'll try and lay out both sides of the ball here and maybe make a better case at the end of it. But we'll start with Ohio State on offense against Notre Dame's defense. So obviously we just talked about Texas playing a lot of zone. That's kind of the way to beat Ohio State, kind of keep them in front. Notre Dame did play Ohio State the last 2 years. They played at Ohio State 2 years ago, and then they had the game in Notre Dame last year. Both games were, I think, 31 points total. I think it was 17-14 and 21-10, I think, were the final scores. So very low-scoring games. Same coaching staff on Notre Dame and DC for both those games. So do they have a little bit of magic? Do they kind of cook up some? And that was against C.J. Stroud and those receivers the first time. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., Ibuka was still on the team, and Kyle McCord, who wasn't playing as good as Will Howard right now, but they've had some success against it. Playing a lot of too high shell that you see against the Kansas City Chiefs and stuff to slow them down. Their big explosive plays in the past when they had Tyreek Hill. So Notre Dame is very man-based though this year, but they don't play man every single down. They play it at like a 60% clip, so 40% is in zone. So will they stick to that heavy man percentage, or are they going to really flip it and go zone? I think they're going to test it early and go man and see if they can man up. And they kind of did that last year against Marvin Harrison, kind of just bracketed them, had a safety behind their best receiver. So I think they're going to double team Smith a lot and make Mbuka or Carnell Tate or some of those other weapons try and beat them. But I think Notre Dame's going to play a lot of man, be aggressive, and it could go boom or bust. Either they're going to hit some big plays and it's going to be over by halftime, or they could really frustrate these wide receivers and really suppress the game a little bit and maybe force a turnover or two, because Notre Dame's very good at forcing turnovers. Will Howard's not that great with pressure in his face, so if they could get a little pressure, I don't see Notre Dame's not a great pass rush team. They didn't really get to Aller too much in the Penn State game, but they were really good against Georgia. But I don't think they were respecting those receivers against Georgia as much as they'll have to respect Ohio State's receivers. So it's tough. I think Ohio State has passed to run the ball here. They're not a great running team, even with those two great backs. The offensive line's definitely banged up. That's the one area that you could maybe target Ohio State and maybe say that they're a little weak in that area with a couple key injuries on the offensive line. So I think this, if Ohio State can run the ball consistently for 6, 7, 8 yards, it's going to be a very, very long day, because then you got to commit more guys to the box, and then you got to leave some guys on islands, and that's how they could beat you. If Notre Dame could stop the run, they're very undersized. They were undersized before these injuries, and now they have a couple key injuries on the D-line. But I don't really trust Ohio State's offensive line to really maul teams and really rush for 200, 250 yards. They do rely on the outside, and that's where Notre Dame's strength is. So it's kind of going to be good on good on the outside. But if Notre Dame could stop the run and really force them to pass the ball, maybe force a turnover or two, and if they could hold up on the outsides, they have very talented corners. They're going to play some zone. I trust this coaching staff to realize they're not going to stay stubborn and just play man and get beat like Oregon and Tennessee did the whole game. And honestly, too, Notre Dame has a lot better cornerbacks than Tennessee and Oregon, too. So I'm more confident in them. But I don't think they're going to play man the whole game. I think they'll sprinkle in some zone, try and confuse Will Howard a little bit, maybe get a pick or two. So I trust Notre Dame's staff on that side. But I don't know how many points they're going to limit them to. Could it be 35? I wouldn't be surprised. Could it be a 17-14 like the kind of Texas held them to without those crazy scores? Yeah. So that side of the ball is going to be very interesting. That's where the game's going to be won, is Notre Dame's defense against Ohio State's offense, because the other side's pretty cut and dry. We know what's going to happen there. So if Notre Dame has a chance in this game, they have to keep it low scoring, keep Ohio State off the field with their offense running the ball when Notre Dame has the ball. But it's a lot of thin margins. If Ohio State gets cooking early, then it could be dangerous, and it could be a blowout like we've seen in the last couple, I think 7 or 8 national championships. I saw some that the margin of victory is around 18 points.
Wow.
Semifinals have been close, but the championships have not been close. That also scares me as a Notre Dame fan. The line is very high. So I don't know. I'm very weary to see. I want to see how Notre Dame comes out, how they look in the first half, but they do make really good halftime adjustments like we highlighted against Penn State. So if they could just keep it in range in a 7, 10, 14 at max at halftime, maybe make those adjustments and then maybe look to cut into the lead a little bit. But they're definitely going to be battling uphill on this side of the ball when the defense takes the field against Ohio State. And it's just crazy. They have the 2 running backs that are insane. They have the wide receivers that are insane. And then Will Howard, who nobody really likes. He's not that great, not going to be a great NFL player, but he's playing at an elite level. The first 2 playoff games was a little shaky against Texas. So he's the big X factor. If he's on, he's using his legs, he's hitting guys downfield, he's looking sharp, it's game over. If he's not, and you can get him rattled a little bit like they got Kyle McCord and CJ Stroud rattled in those last 2 matchups, then you can maybe see a closer game and maybe they could cover this number. But this side of the ball is going to be very interesting to me, Case. This is going to be where they win or lose the game.
Yeah. No doubt about it. I mean, if they're not stopping Ohio State, this thing's could get out of control. I mean, that's what we know. We know Notre Dame's going to have to be able to keep Howard guessing, limit the run game, limit those deep touchdowns. I mean, that's what happened with Oregon. I mean, Oregon was just getting torched out there in the passing game. So if Notre Dame could just stop that, make this thing a line of scrimmage type of game, make them run the ball if the pass game's not there, get Howard a little off tilter there. then they for sure have a chance to do that, because, as you know, on the other side of the ball, I'm not sure Notre Dame's going to be able to score a lot of points. I mean, it's nothing against Notre Dame, just the Ohio State defense is elite. I mean, we saw, Penn State couldn't score a touchdown on this Ohio State defense inside the 3-yard line twice, and then, or 2 red zone trips, 0 points there for Penn State on that interception that Aller threw, and which hit Harrison Wallace in the fucking hands. I don't want to go back 2 months to this game, but not sure how that was intercepted still. But regardless, this Ohio State defense is elite. I mean, and even the games that they lost, Michigan, for example, a terrible, terrible Michigan team, Ohio State's defense really did their job. I mean, you couldn't really ask for a lot more out of them. Obviously, a couple mistakes here and there, but they lost that game 13-10. Like, it was not the defense. So the defense has been consistently elite. I think, Notre Dame might have to get a little creative if they could try to run the ball. I mean, I know it might be hard, but try to get Jeremiah Love going to at least open up some options in the passing game. But yeah, I'm curious on your thoughts here on what Notre Dame could do, really, if anything, offensively, to try to throw this Ohio State defense off just a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough. I mean, one of my plays that I'm really eyeing is Notre Dame team total under 17.5. I feel like that's a key number at 17. If it's still out there, I feel like that's a strong play, even though it's against my team. But I just feel like I don't see them getting into the 20s or high teens here. But the one saving grace is that Michigan game. And I think Notre Dame is very similar to Michigan on the offensive side of the ball. They're a very run-heavy team, very power, want to overpower you at the line of scrimmage, keep the ball away from Ohio State, really muck it up, make it a 13-10 game. That would be ideal for Notre Dame here. So if they could get the run game going, they're very patient with it, like we saw in the Penn State game and the Georgia game too. Like, even if they don't get in the first half, they're going to commit to it and stick with the run game. And then that's when some of those bigger runs maybe happen and you start wearing down the defense a little bit. So I wouldn't get discouraged early on if they can't run the ball. They just need to keep it close, like they kind of did these last couple of games, that they could still run the ball and they're not chasing a 17 or 21 point deficit. Definitely some positives was Riley Leonard had over 200 yards of passing, which was, I don't think he's done that in a while against Penn State. So the one came off that huge chunk play.
I was just going to say.
That was still, take that out. I think he was at like 240 or 250 passing or 230. So still like high hundreds, which is pretty good for him. So they're going to need him to throw the ball. He could honestly scramble whenever he wants to. It's always a good run play when you're trying to pass it. But yeah, I just think it's going to be real tough sledding. So you just got to stay patient. Defense has to keep them in it, because I'll say it's one of the best run defenses in the country. So Notre Dame hasn't been running it great all playoffs. They just need to do enough just to move the chains and hold the ball from Ohio State's offense. But it's going to be tough. You could beat them on the outside, but Notre Dame doesn't have great receivers, as we saw. But they flashed a little bit in that Penn State game, and when they need them most. And the tight end Mitchell Evans had a couple catches. They had Aeneas Williams, their third string running back out of the backfield, had a big catch down the sideline in that last game. So I think their pass game was a little bit better than I thought against Penn State. So that gives you a little promise, but completely different beast here. It's going to be tough. Caleb Downs playing on an insane level. He's just roaming, flying downhill. You might be spying Riley Leonard sometimes too. So this side, I think, we know what's going to happen here. It's going to be a grind. It's not going to be pretty. So can Notre Dame just do enough to keep them off the field, score a couple field goals, just get in range? Mitch Jeter's kicking really nice right now, has a big leg. So if you could just get in those ranges, get a couple field goals, maybe just shrink this game down a little bit. But Leonard's going to have to be great again, and he's going to have to make plays. We got Angeli as the backup if needed. But some of those, you got to take your shots like Oregon did that first time they played them. It was a little disheartening seeing that second time Oregon played them because they couldn't do anything. So, but Oregon beat them on the outsides with some deep shots. Got to take your shots, which Notre Dame did against Penn State and against Georgia a couple times. So can't be afraid to throw it downfield a little bit this game, because that's going to be your only shot. But I think you'll see a couple trick plays, a couple fake punts, fake field goals maybe, or something like that, just to, Marcus has always got something dialed up in those areas. I think he'll have some in this game, so I wouldn't be surprised. But you got to get creative. I think the number is 17-21. If they could get to that number, then they're in a good spot. If not, then it's tough. And that's where you go back to the spread. Like, it's really tough because 8-9 points is a lot. It's at 8.5 right now. If Notre Dame's defense could hold up, if they could run the ball a little bit, I think 8's a lot. But if Notre Dame's defense cannot stop them and Notre Dame's offense looks confused and can't move the ball at all, this game could definitely get into the 21, 28-point victory. I could see it, but they played tough and they played good the last two times they played Ohio State. It's kind of a similar team. So I'm really interested to see and watch those halftime adjustments. Like we said, they do a good job. I thought offensively was even better adjustments in their defense in that second half. So they found a little magic there in the second half against Penn State. So maybe they could replicate some of those things. But I think it's going to be hopefully a fun game, hopefully a close game for everybody involved and for us. But honestly, a lean, I still know what to do with the spread. I want to take Notre Dame just because I think it's too many points, but I could see Ohio State doing something similar like they did to Texas, where it was close, and then they hit a big play at the end to push it over and cover that number and win by 2 scores or something. I could honestly see that just kind of wearing down Notre Dame, and then they hit a play at the end with 4 or 5 minutes left and push it to a double-digit victory. So I'm probably going to be on the under, going to be on the Notre Dame team total under. There's some props I think are good, but we can't bet props here in PA. But if you're in other states, there's some nice props out there and some matchups that are good. But I think I'm going to end up probably taking Ohio State minus the 8, maybe doing a little emotional hedge there, as we like to call it. So if they Notre Dame covers, keeps it close, great. I lose my money. But if they don't get blown out, then at least I win some money at the end of the day. So I think that's how I'm gonna roll into this game, but not feeling great on either side.
Good way to look at it. I would actually like to say I did place $50 on Notre Dame money line when Penn State was up 10-0 in that game. Got Notre Dame plus 350, so that was a nice little emotional hedge, as you said. So all about that. But yeah, I mean, I agree with all those points you highlight. I mean, it's an uphill battle for sure. Paisley, I am also happy in a way that you now as a Notre Dame fan get that feel of playing Ohio State, every year or so. It seems like they've been playing a little bit the last few years. So big game for Notre Dame. Haven't beaten them yet. So we'll see if this could be the one. Probably not. I know it's a little bit different. It's not a regular season game here, and Ohio State's going to be playing their best as well. But yeah, we'll see. They've been playing a little bit in recent history. I saw Lou Holtz is pretty confident here. Made some comments as if Ohio State wins, it's just that Ryan Day preserve his job. I like that. So, heating it up a little bit.
Love the rivalry there between those two. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, it's a good little side gig going on between them. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'll let you give your final score prediction, and I know it's kind of all over the place. I'm taking Ohio State. I think they'll cover just for all the points we highlighted. I think it's unlikely Ohio State's going to come out and look like they did against Michigan. I mean, this is the national title. I think they've been playing better. I mean, no doubt since that loss, they kind of turned it around. I think they're motivated, just as Notre Dame did with the NIU loss. Obviously different circumstances, but kind of use that to propel themselves into these situations. I don't know what I think I'm going to take Ohio State at, I don't know, maybe 27, I want to say 27-30. I'm going to go 27-13 Ohio State. I think 2 scores. Not sure how they do it, but I just maybe a late turnover, or I don't know. I just don't trust Notre Dame enough scoring enough points. That's going to be my prediction. So sorry, Mr. Paisley, you'll have to wait another year, I guess. But maybe I'll be wrong. Who knows? Unlikely, but maybe. Before we get into final thoughts on everything here, what are your final thoughts on the game, I guess, prediction, and yeah, then we'll close this thing out.
Yeah, no, it's a tough one. I have one Notre Dame ticket from before the season. I took them on a little boost at DraftKings, and then I took them before the playoffs started. The one was at plus 1,800, I think, boosted it up a little bit, and the other one was plus 900. So I would love nothing more than Notre Dame win for my own self and my bank accounts. That'd be very nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be low scoring, but I do think Ohio State gets it done with a late score. I think it's going to be like a 24-14, I would say, where Notre Dame hangs on, but Ohio State's just too much for them at the end. Notre Dame should have won that game last year. That was the game they had 10 guys on the field on the last play and had an interception go through their hands with 10 seconds or 20 seconds left. So they have been playing them tight, and I think I bet against them both those times too. So hopefully they'll prove me wrong. And this team is kind of a little team of destiny. Like, I've been doubting them against Indiana. I doubted them last game against USC. I didn't think they were going to win that game. I doubted them against Georgia. Didn't really like them against Penn State. So if they could prove me wrong one more time, but I haven't felt great in any game these last couple games for Notre Dame. So
Yeah.
we shall see. But yeah, I think Ohio State gets it done, gets the win. But I think hopefully Notre Dame keeps it somewhat close. But we'll see. Should be fun. Just excited to be here.
Paisley, that's exactly right. Just excited to be here. It's a good way to look at it. If you happen to talk to Marcus Freeman, by the way, before the game, if you're inside the 5-yard line, okay, talking 3-yard line, 4-yard line, maybe even 2-yard line, do not try to run the ball up the middle. I just don't think it's going to work. I don't. I don't know what to do. I'm not saying pitch it like Texas did. I'd hate to see them throw it 4 times inside the 5. So I don't know what to tell them to do, but just tell them not to run the ball up the middle. Now, if you're inside the half-yard line on 1st and goal, I would say do a QB sneak 4 fucking times. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
4 times. If it doesn't work 4 times inside the 1, then forget it. They're not going to have a chance to win this game. So that's my little – if I was an inside the 5 coordinator, if that was I think I would be good at this. Do not run it.
The field goal early, maybe.
Honestly, maybe kick the field goal early.
On first down, maybe do a little something like that.
That's all I would have to say. But anyway.
That's good. Thank you for that. Those words of encouragement, Case. I appreciate it. I'll let Marcus know.
Please let him know. All right. Well, that's a wrap on the Notre Dame Ohio State game, I guess. It was a fun year, Mr. Paisley. As you know, to any of our listeners out there, it was a great year. We appreciate anybody taking the time, even if you skip around to some interesting parts. Some excitement. I think we're going to be back for sure next season. We could talk about all that later, but I think we're going to do it and hopefully get going on like Spotify and some of the other platforms to be able to listen to, where it's just not on YouTube and Twitter, where you could listen at different times, and we'll try to continue to grow the page. But yeah, I don't really have much other things to say. I mean, just as a season as a whole, and I'll keep this kind of 2 to 3 minutes, but just some thoughts. I think the college football playoff brackets definitely going to need some changes. I think we all kind of agree on the seeding there. I don't really love the buys on the power 4s. I think there's a different way to do it, whether it's, just let the 12 best teams in, or if you want to have the auto bids, put them at like 12, 11, 10. Let's not give them this bye week. I think that's kind of, ridiculous. And I'd also like to note that all the bye teams lost, as we said. NIL transfer portal, once again, I mean, this is just a subject that's not going to end anytime soon, but certainly needs some reform. I feel like I don't want to say Penn State would have won by any means with Bo Prabula, but I think there was a lot of positions that they could have used him, and they really certainly did miss with him. I think in that Notre Dame game, I think there were so many packages where it's like, let's put Bo in, let's run the ball, and I just don't think there's any reason why a team should have to lose a guy like that in the time where it matters most in the playoff, just because of the college football calendar. So that's really all the 2 points I noted. I mean, Penn State has a lot of guys returning, so excited for next year, and we'll get into all this in August when we return. But yeah, it was a great season, and we will likely not do any more this season. Maybe if Notre Dame wins, maybe we'll let Paisley hop on here and do a 5-minute monologue. I don't know. But anyway, Mr. Paisley, final thoughts here before we close out the 2024-2025 college football season.
Yeah, I think it was a good season. I love the conference realignment for the purposes of having these big games, and there was a lot of cool matchups like in Ohio State, Oregon during the year that we normally don't get. So I thought that was really cool. I thought the amount of teams in the playoff was correct. I like the 12 teams, giving everybody kind of a fair shot. And it really allows for teams to kind of mess up. That was my one gripe with the 4 team, was that you had to be perfect or close to perfect just to get in. And I thought it was too little of teams. You lose one game or you had one bad loss. And these 2 teams that are in the final, like, they definitely had some bad losses, with Notre Dame and the NIU loss. We'll bring it up one last time. And Ohio State having that really bad loss the last game of the year, but they get that redemption. They still get in the playoffs, which I think is fair, if you don't have too many losses on your schedule. But I thought the amount of teams was right. I agree with you. We got to fix the bracketing style of it, because it gave some teams some easy paths to the semifinals, or it had some, bad matchups for some of the teams like Oregon, who had to face this Ohio State team in the second round as #1 overall seed. So hopefully they get that straightened out. I think the transfer portal and stuff has a lot of negatives, but I think you're seeing now the spread of talent around, and it's not just focused on a Clemson and Alabama and Georgia, and they just have the best, 100 guys every year. I think you're seeing it more spread out, unlike Ohio State, who pays for their teams. But every other team, you've been seeing some of these teams compete, like Arizona State or like Boise all season until they got to the playoff and stuff like that. So I feel like Notre Dame even being more talented than I could ever remember on a depth per basis. So it is fun seeing it more spread around, more teams having equal chances to get in. It's not just an SEC dominated season every year, but I think it's good for the game. They're going to keep tweaking it. Hopefully, we probably need a governing body in the NCAA, but a really fun season. Hopefully, we get a good championship game out of it. But it was fun doing this all year with you, Case, and with the fans listening. We appreciate everybody there. 20 episodes. We didn't think we'd get this far, so we appreciate it. Give us some feedback, and hopefully we'll be around next year on some bigger platforms. But yeah, it's fun for us doing it, so we have a fun time. So this is sad close to the year, but a successful season for sure.
Definitely successful season. And would like to point out PB Betting, we're active on the page. You're going to be throwing out college basketball bets. I know Paisley's been taking the lead on that for the last couple of months. Now with college football season done, maybe I could take my mind and try to focus on that a little bit. So we'll be doing some college basketball picks, maybe some others as well, other sports, as well. So tune in for that. March Madness really coming around the corner. So I know last year we did do a couple episodes with that. So maybe we'll talk about that. I haven't done it yet, but yeah, strong season. And we will be back, I guess, in August of the college football season. Take care, everybody.